Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk about Spring Boot. So, Java Spring Boot. Now, I don't know a lot about Spring Boot, um, which is why today I also had to look up what's the difference between Java Spring Boot and Hibernate. And it turns out that Hibernate is an ORM, which is an abstraction for executing SQL queries. There's ORMs in like Python and JavaScript. I don't know. But definitely in Python, like SQL Alchemy, I think. SQL Alchemy in Python. So it's an abstraction over SQL, calls to a database, to a relational database. Anyways, that's Hibernate. It's data management, or like a data ORM, right? Orchestration, something. But Spring Boot is I don't know. I guess it's a dependency injection framework. Dependency. I mean, it's a lot more than that. It's in general, it's a framework for writing various Java applications. So, for example, if you want to write a REST service, you can use Java Spring Boot to write your service. So, um, yeah, so instead of using like a library, so the idea is, I think, so in the video I watched, the person presenting the video wanted to make a distinction between library versus framework. So library versus framework. So a library gives you code to use, but a framework tells you how to write your code. Tells you, so it's a lot more, tells you how to write your code. It's a lot more, um, serious or heavy. Like the influence is heavier from a framework. So Java Spring Boot is a framework, so it's going to tell you a lot about what you're, how to write your code, because it's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So, for example, um, yeah, like you can just there's like, so you define like a Java Spring Boot application, Java Spring Boot application, and then you can do things like create a REST controller, which is a class. So you add these little annotations to classes. Let me show you from the video what those look like. You add little annotations, like that's an annotation, and then REST controller, for example. REST controller, and then a class, and then like this. And then this becomes a REST controller, whatever that means. So let me show you what that looks like. Go over here. So the annotations, see all these, like these are all annotations, and it like somehow Java Spring Boot takes care of. So that's the application that I was talking about, and then the REST controllers here, and then the get mapping is also an annotation. So this is for designing REST routes. So instead of having to think about, oh, it's a REST route, because there's a lot of things here. Oh, it's a REST route. There's a um, if you were thinking about this in terms of JavaScript, right? You're getting a JavaScript response back from the browser, and you have to parse that out, and you have to find it, I guess, in the header or wherever it is. So yeah, so instead we can just put this path thing, this. I mean, the mapping. We can put this thing here, then a path variable, and it's going to parse it out of out of the string, and put it into our function call. So like a lot of heavy lifting there, right? But we have to, why is it a framework? We have to use this path variable, and we're kind of restricted to using it. The other thing which is difficult, I guess, yes, let me just write like a lot of heavy lifting. A lot of heavy lifting. The other thing that, I mean, there's a lot that it does apparently. Yeah, let me just talk about, so obviously security. I don't really know how Java Spring Boot enforces security or how it helps you create secure apps, but somehow it does it. So Java Spring Boot maybe like enforces best practice, helps you create secure apps. The other thing that I talk about is dependency injection. So what does this mean? This means that you take your application logic and you're going to separate it out into, in this case for the REST application, you're going to separate it out into, the REST routes, and then you're going to have like a bunch of like services or classes, and they're like abstract things which you can you can like call them to get stuff out of them, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense. Like for example, I don't have any examples. Let's see. I don't think he has any examples either. Well, yeah, so basically it's like an MVC framework, I guess. I'm not too familiar with these things here. Yeah, but it's like the logic, you want to separate the logic. You want to separate the logic from the REST routes, and you want the REST routes to be able to communicate with some sort of backend services. And they're not like jobs, obviously. They're just like application logic, which you decided to put somewhere else for the sake of transparency. So, so the question is, how are you going to reference these services in your REST routes, especially if you have like maybe you have multiple REST route classes, or I don't know. I'm not sure. Well, the point is that you only want to create one. I think this is the point of dependency injection, is that you only want to create one of these. Like you want to basically reuse them. Obviously, you don't want to keep creating new service classes. You want to be like, you want to have like in your mind like a pool of all these like classes that you've already created, and then like whenever it's needed in some class, you basically inject that class into there. So whenever a class needs another class needs another class, like you don't want to worry about passing it around. What I'm trying to say, whenever a class needs another class, then another class, then you inject it. Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that's also correct. Finally, there's a lot of configuration you can do. For example, the example given in the video is if you want to save your logs. I think this is also when I looked it up in ChatGPT. If you want to save your logs, you can just add a configuration parameter in your app. There's a file called probably application.yaml. I'm not sure. And in here, there's like a place log file. This isn't exact, and then you can specify the name of the file. So main.txt, and then it's going to save your logs. So yeah, what I read in ChatGPT is that Spring Boot is able to separate several components of your application. What I mean by this is, for example, the logging, what you choose to print out, your logging, it can go into a file, right? It can separate out from the rest of the application. Your logging can go into a file, which is difficult, right? Hopefully that serves as a nice introduction to Java Spring Boot. Thank you. See you next time.